I have lived long enough to know that the people who change your life rarely knock on the front door. They arrive in unexpected places, at hours you did not plan for, carrying stories you never asked to hear. And once they arrive, you cannot pretend they did not come. I learned this one autumn evening on a piece of land I thought I owned alone. The sound came from the old hay barn. Lucas stopped, water bucket in hand. The mare lifted her head, ears forward. Something moved in there. Not wind, not an animal. A voice, thin as thread, human. He set the bucket down slow. His boots made no sound crossing the dust. The barn door hung crooked on one hinge. He pushed it open with 2 fingers. Dust floated in the last slant of daylight. Canvas piled in the corner. Horse blankets. Burlap sacks. The canvas moved. Lucas crossed the space in 3 steps. Pulled back the tarp. A woman lay beneath. Face pale. Lips cracked and moving. Brown eyes fixed on his. She wore a cameo brooch pinned to her collar, the same one described in letters he kept folded in his shirt pocket. "Can't breathe," she whispered. "Please." His mail-order bride, here, hiding, half dead in his barn. If this story finds you tonight, I would be honored to know where you are listening from. Drop your town or state in the comments below. And if you have been enjoying these tales without subscribing, I kindly invite you to join us. Your support means more than you know. He lifted her. She weighed nothing. Dust and sweat and something else clung to her skin. 3 days on the road, maybe more. Her head lolled against his shoulder. The cabin door stuck. Lucas kicked it open. He laid her on the rope bed, the corn husk mattress crackling beneath her weight. Her eyes had closed again. He lit the coal oil lamp, worked the pump until water came cold into the tin basin, pressed a wet cloth to her cracked lips. She didn't respond. Lucas put the kettle on the stove, found the dried beef strips hanging in the corner, cut them thin, dropped them into the water as it heated. The broth would be weak, but it would be something. She stirred when he brought the cup to her mouth. "Small sips," he said. "Don't rush it." Her throat moved, once, twice. Her eyes opened and fixed on his face. "You're him." Her voice scraped like sand on wood. "The one in the picture." "Reckon I am." She studied him, comparing. Maybe. To the tintype he'd sent 6 months back. He looked older now. Felt it too. Pa said. She stopped. Swallowed. "If anything happened, find Lucas Sands. Said you was the only honest man left in the territory. Said the marshals in Carson City were bought. Didn't know which ones he could trust." Lucas set the cup on the floor. "Your pa, Sheriff Harlan. You knew him, knew of him, never met." He paused. "What happened to him?" Her hand moved to her dress pocket. Trembling fingers pulled out something wrapped in paper. She held it toward the lamplight. A badge. Tarnished brass. The star shape worn smooth at the edges. Lucas took it. The weight of it surprised him. He turned it over. Engraved on the back, Sheriff Thomas Harlan, Clearwater County. "He's dead," she said. The words came flat, emptied out. 3 weeks ago, they shot him in the street outside our house. He was investigating men who control the gold claims. He found something. Names. Proof. Her eyes met his. Before he died, he made me promise. Bring the badge to you. He said there's something hidden inside it. Lucas looked at the badge in his hand. Solid brass. No seams. No hinges. Hidden where? I don't know. Her voice cracked. He didn't get to tell me. They came too fast. Outside, the mare snorted. Lucas's head turned toward the window. Nothing but darkness now. But somewhere out there, boot prints circled his barn. Someone knew she was here. Lucas woke before dawn. The cabin held the gray half-light of early morning. He lay still on his bedroll near the door, listening. Wind through the cottonwood, the mare shifting in her stall. Nothing else. He pulled on his boots and stepped outside. The air bit cold against his face. Late autumn had settled into the territory, and the mornings carried frost now. He walked the perimeter slow, eyes on the ground. Near the barn, he stopped. Boot prints. Fresh ones. 2 sets. Maybe 3. They circled the barn, came close to the cabin wall beneath the window, then headed back toward the north ridge. Lucas crouched, touched the edge of one print. The dirt still held shape. Last night, then, while he slept, while she slept, he stood and looked north. The ridge sat empty against the paling sky, but they'd been here, close enough to hear voices through the window. He went back inside. Grace slept on the rope bed, her breathing shallow but steady. The color hadn't fully returned to her face. He didn't wake her. The cast iron skillet hung on its nail. He took it down, built up the fire in the stove, measured cornmeal from the burlap sack into the pot of water he'd left heating overnight. The mush thickened as he stirred. He ground coffee beans and set the enamel pot to boil. The smell of food woke her. She sat up slow, one hand pressed to her ribs. Her other hand trembled when she pushed the hair from her face. "You shouldn't be moving yet," Lucas said. "Can't stay in bed forever." She swung her legs to the floor, tested her weight, stood. Her knees buckled for a moment, then held. He spooned mush into 2 tin plates, set them on the table, poured coffee into 2 cups. The cup rattled when she picked it up. Her hands still shook from the days of running. "Eat," he said. "Don't look out the window." She paused, cup halfway to her lips. "Why?" "Because I said so." He took a bite, chewed, swallowed. "We got company. Up on the ridge." Her face went still. Not surprise. Recognition. The Coltons. Lucas looked at her. "You tell me." She set the cup down, wrapped both hands around it for warmth. "There's 2 of them. Brothers. Marcus and Edwin Colton. They own the land office in Clearwater. The assay office, too. Half the claims filed in the last 5 years went through their hands. And your pa found out they were stealing, not just stealing, buying claims for pennies when they knew gold was there, threatening families off their land, forging deeds." She paused. Pa spent 2 years gathering evidence, names, dates, amounts. He wrote it all down, hid it somewhere safe. The badge. He said the badge would prove everything, but he never got to show me how." Her voice dropped. "They came to the house at supper, 3 men. Pa told me to run. I heard the shots when I reached the tree line." Lucas watched her, her jaw tight, hands steadier now around the cup. Not crying, past crying. "Who else knows you're here?" "Nobody. I traveled by night, hid during the day, stole food when I had to." She met his eyes. "I didn't tell a soul where I was going. Pa made me memorize your name and the directions. Said I shouldn't write anything down. Smart man. He was." She looked toward the window. "But they found me anyway." Lucas pushed back from the table, walked to the window and stood to the side, looking out at an angle. The ridge still sat empty. Then movement. 3 riders crested the hill, stopped, sat their horses in a line. They didn't come closer. They didn't need to. Their patience was the message. "I can leave," Grace said behind him. "I brought this trouble to your door. I can take the badge and go. Find someone else." "Who?" She didn't answer. "Your pa could have sent you anywhere. He had friends, lawmen he knew, but he sent you here." Lucas turned from the window. "Why me?" "He said you was different. Said you didn't owe anybody. Didn't want anything from the Coltons or the territory. Said that made you the only man he could trust." Lucas looked at the badge sitting on the table. The tarnished brass caught the morning light. A dead man's star. A dead man's secret. "I never met your pa. Exchanged letters with him about you. That's all. He knew men. Better than anyone." Grace pushed herself up from the table, walked to stand beside him at the window. She looked at the riders on the ridge. "Those men killed him. Now they want what he died for. If they get it, nobody will ever know what the Coltons did. Nobody will pay." Lucas said nothing. The riders sat motionless on the hill. The sun cleared the eastern ridge and threw long shadows across the dust. "I ain't asking you to fight," Grace said. "I'm asking you to help me finish what he started." The mare whinnied from the barn. One of the riders turned his horse, slow and deliberate, and started down the slope toward the fence line. Lucas stepped back from the window. "You eat your breakfast," he said. "Stay away from the doors. What are you gonna do?" He picked up the badge from the table, turned it over in his hand. Solid brass. No seams, no hinges. But somewhere inside this thing, a dead sheriff had hidden something worth dying for. "I gave your pa my word," Lucas said. "When I wrote those letters, I promised I'd take care of you. Ain't gonna let him down now." He tucked the badge into his shirt pocket. Outside, the rider had reached the fence. He sat his horse there, waiting, making sure they knew he could come closer anytime he wanted. The rider stayed at the fence line for an hour. Then he turned his horse and rode back up the ridge. The 3 of them sat there until midday, then disappeared over the crest. Lucas spent the afternoon checking the property, the root cellar behind the cabin, the well, the barn rafters. He counted ammunition, checked the hinges on every door, filled every container he could find with water from the pump. Grace watched him work. She didn't ask questions. When he came inside for supper, she had beans and salt pork waiting on the stove. They ate in silence. The lamp threw shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. After supper, Lucas cleared the table. He set the badge in the center, under the lamp. The brass caught the light, dull and scratched. Your pa said it was hidden inside. Grace nodded. He said the badge would prove everything, but I don't see how. It's solid. Lucas picked it up, turned it over, ran his thumb along the edges. The star had 5 points, each one worn smooth from years of handling. The pin on the back looked original. The engraving was deep, professional. He went to his toolbox by the stove, found his skinning knife. The bone handle fit his palm like it always did. "Hold the lamp steady," he said. Grace lifted it, brought it closer. The light fell direct on the badge. Lucas studied the edges. The brass looked seamless, but something about the weight bothered him. Too heavy for its size. He pressed the tip of the knife against the seam where the backing met the star. Nothing. He tried the top point, then the bottom. On the third point, the knife slipped into a gap so small, he almost missed it. "There," Grace whispered. Lucas worked the blade careful, slow. The metal resisted, then gave. A thin plate popped loose from the back of the badge. It clattered on the table. Beneath it, a hollow space. Inside the hollow, paper folded tight. Grace's hand went to her mouth. Lucas set down the knife. He reached into the cavity with 2 fingers and pulled out the paper, thin as onion skin, yellowed at the edges. He unfolded it careful, spreading it flat on the table. Writing covered both sides, small, cramped letters pressed hard into the paper, numbers, names, dates. "That's his hand," Grace said. Her voice came out strange, thick. "That's Pa's writing." Lucas turned the paper toward the light. The first column listed names: Marcus Colton, Edwin Colton, Henry Marsh, William Decker, Samuel Griggs. Below each name, amounts in dollars. Beside the amounts, claim numbers. The second column showed dates, going back 5 years. Each date matched to a transaction. Claims bought for $50, sold for $5,000. Families listed as sellers who Lucas had never heard of. Some names crossed out with a single line. At the bottom of the page, one phrase circled 3 times in heavy ink. "Judge Whitmore knows." "Who's Whitmore?" Lucas asked. "Retired judge. Lives 2 days' ride from here, up in the canyon country." Grace's finger traced the circled words. "Pa mentioned him once. Said he was the only honest judge left from the old days." Lucas read the list again. 12 names, 8 claim numbers, thousands of dollars in stolen gold. "This is what they killed him for." Grace didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the paper, on her father's handwriting, on the careful columns of evidence he'd spent years collecting. "He knew," she said finally. "He knew they'd come for him. That's why he hid this. That's why he sent me to you." Her voice cracked. "He didn't die just for justice. He died so they wouldn't find me with this paper." Her shoulders began to shake. No sound came out, just the trembling, starting in her hands and moving up through her whole body. She pressed both palms flat on the table, trying to stop it. Lucas watched her. The lamplight caught the tears running down her face. She didn't wipe them away, didn't try to hide them. He stood, walked to the stove, poured coffee from the enamel pot into her cup, set it in front of her. Then he sat back down and waited. The wind rattled the shutters. The lamp flame flickered. Grace's breathing came ragged, then slower, then steady again. She picked up the cup, drank, set it down. "I haven't cried since it happened," she said. "Not once. I kept moving, kept hiding. Told myself I'd cry when I was safe." She looked at him. "I don't know if I'll ever be safe again. You're safe tonight. Tonight." She almost smiled. "What about tomorrow?" Lucas folded the paper careful, following the original creases. He slid it back into the hollow space in the badge, pressed the backing into place until it clicked. "Tomorrow I ride to town, get supplies, see what people are saying, and then we find this Judge Whitmore, show him what your pa died for." Grace studied his face. "You don't owe me anything. You don't owe pa anything. We exchanged letters about a marriage that never happened. That's all. Your pa trusted me. He trusted a lot of people. Most of them let him down." Lucas stood, walked to the window. The night outside sat black and still. No movement on the ridge, no lanterns in the distance. But they were out there, waiting. "I spent 10 years drifting," he said. "Ranch to ranch, town to town. Never stayed anywhere long enough to matter. Never let anybody count on me for anything." He turned back to face her. "Your pa saw something in those letters I wrote. Something I didn't even know was there. He bet your life on it. And I don't aim to make him wrong." Grace looked at the badge on the table, her father's badge, her father's secret. Everything he'd lived for, everything he'd died for, hidden in a hollow space, smaller than her palm. "He said you were a man who finished things," she said. "I didn't know what he meant until now." Lucas picked up the badge. The brass felt warm from the lamplight. He tucked it into his shirt pocket, felt its weight against his chest. Outside, a horse whinnied in the darkness. Not the mare. The sound came from further away, from the direction of the north ridge. Lucas moved to the lamp and turned the wick down until the flame died. The cabin dropped into darkness. "Stay away from the windows," he said. In the silence, another sound. Hoofbeats. More than one horse, moving closer. The hoofbeats stopped at the fence line the night before. Lucas had waited in the dark, listening. Voices carried across the distance, too low to make out words. Then the horses turned and rode away. He didn't sleep that night. At first light, he saddled the mare. Grace stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself against the morning chill. "Stay inside," Lucas said. "Don't answer the door for anyone. How long will you be? Few hours, maybe more." He swung up into the saddle. "Keep away from the windows. If anyone comes to the door, you go down through the root cellar and head for the creek. Follow it north until you hit the wagon road." She nodded, didn't argue. He'd expected her to argue. Lucas rode out through the back trail, looping wide around the north ridge before cutting toward town. The trail wound through scrub oak and dry grass. The kind of country where a man could see anyone following from a mile away. Nobody followed. The town of Clearwater sat in a shallow valley, a single main street lined with false-fronted buildings, Lucas tied the mare at the rail outside the general store and stepped up onto the boardwalk. The first man he passed looked away. The second crossed to the other side of the street. A woman he'd known for 3 years, bought eggs from her every month, gathered her skirts and hurried past without a word. Her eyes never lifted from the ground. Lucas pushed open the door to the general store. The bell above it jangled. 2 men stood at the counter talking to Silas. They stopped when Lucas entered, looked at him, looked at each other. Then they gathered their parcels and left without finishing their conversation. The door swung shut behind them. The bell jangled again. Silas stood behind the counter, hands flat on the wood. His face showed nothing. "Lucas, Silas, what can I get you?" Lucas walked to the counter. The floorboards creaked under his boots. The store smelled like tobacco and pickle brine and leather. Same as always. But something else hung in the air now. Something he couldn't name. Flour, 20 pounds, salt, lamp oil, whatever medical supplies you got. Silas nodded and moved along the shelves, pulling items down. He set them on the counter one by one. Flour in a canvas sack, salt in a paper bag, a tin of lamp oil, a small box of carbolic salve and clean bandages. "You're buying enough for a siege. Lucas, just being careful." Silas glanced toward the window. The street outside sat empty. He leaned across the counter, dropped his voice low. "The Colton's been talking, saying your bride stole that badge, stole money too, saying she killed her own pa to get it." Lucas felt his jaw tighten. "You believe that?" "Don't matter what I believe. Matters what folks with guns believe." Silas wrapped the items in brown paper, tied them with string. His hands moved quick, practiced. "Word is, the Coltons are offering $500 to anyone who brings her back. 500 more for whoever finds what she took. She didn't take anything that wasn't hers. I figured." Silas pushed the parcel across the counter. "But I'm the only one who's going to figure that way. Most folks around here owe the Coltons something. Money, favors. They ain't going to cross them for a stranger." Lucas counted coins from his pocket. The money he'd saved from selling last season's hay. He laid them on the counter. "I ain't asking for help, Silas. Just supplies." "I know." Silas swept the coins into his palm. His eyes met Lucas's for just a moment. "That's what worries me." The door opened behind them. A man stepped in, stopped when he saw Lucas, then turned and walked out again. The bell jangled a 3rd time. Silas watched the door swing shut. "You should go, before more people see you here." Lucas tucked the parcel under his arm. "Thanks for the warning." "Ain't much of a warning, just the truth." Silas paused, then spoke quieter. "My sister Martha lives up north, near the canyon country. Her husband runs a small ranch there. If things get bad, she'd take you in. Tell her I sent you." Lucas nodded once. "Watch yourself out there," Silas added. "The Coltons don't just want that badge. They want anybody who knows what's on it. Dead men don't testify." Lucas left without another word. He rode back through the hills, taking a different route than before. The sun climbed high and hot. Sweat ran down his back, soaked through his shirt. He stopped twice to let the mare drink from the creek and to check the trail behind him. Empty both times. The cabin came into view as the sun began to drop. Smoke rose from the chimney. He told her not to light the stove during the day, but he couldn't blame her for needing the warmth. The autumn chill cut through the walls. He tied the mare at the rail and carried the supplies inside. Grace stood at the table, looking up when he entered. The cabin looked different. It took him a moment to understand why. Water containers lined the wall by the stove. Every pot, every bucket, every jar he owned, filled to the brim. The root cellar door stood open, and he could see supplies already moved down there. Blankets, food, the small box of ammunition he kept in the bottom drawer. She had reorganized everything. Escape routes marked in her mind. Provisions staged for quick departure. "You've been busy," he said. "I wasn't going to sit here and do nothing." She took the parcel from him, began unwrapping it on the table. Her hands moved steady now, the trembling from the first days nearly gone. "What did you find out?" Lucas pulled out a chair and sat. His legs ached from the ride. His back ached worse. 3 nights of broken sleep had caught up with him. His eyes burned, but he kept them open. "The Coltons put a price on your head. $500. Another $500 for what your pa hid." He watched her face. She didn't flinch. "They're telling people you stole the badge, stole money. Some are saying you killed him yourself." Grace set down the bag of salt. Her hands stayed steady. "And people believe that. Some do, some don't. But nobody's going to help us. Not against the Coltons." She nodded, like she'd expected it, like she'd known all along. "Then we help ourselves." Lucas looked around the cabin, the water containers, the supplies in the cellar, the escape route she'd already planned without being told. "You weren't waiting to be rescued," he said. "I stopped waiting for rescue the night Pa died." She met his eyes. "What's the plan?" "We find Judge Whitmore, show him what's in the badge, let the law handle the rest. And if the law is bought, Whitmore ain't, your pa said so." He circled the man's name 3 times. Lucas pulled the badge from his shirt pocket, set it on the table between them. 2 days' ride to the canyon country. We leave before dawn. Grace looked at the badge, then at the supplies, then at him. "There's something else," she said. "While you were gone, a man came to the fence line, didn't come closer, just sat there on his horse, watching the cabin. Then he left something hanging on the post and rode away." Lucas stood. "What did he leave?" Grace reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a piece of paper, folded once. She handed it to him. He unfolded it. 2 words, written in block letters. "Last chance." They didn't leave before dawn. The note changed things. Lucas spent the next 2 days watching the ridge. The riders came and went at odd hours, never approaching, never leaving completely. They were waiting for something. An answer, maybe, or reinforcements. On the 3rd morning, Lucas woke to the smell of coffee already brewing. Grace stood at the stove, stirring oatmeal in the iron pot. She'd been up for hours. He could tell by the way the cabin looked. Swept floors, folded blankets, water already drawn from the pump. "You should rest more," he said. "I've rested enough." She didn't turn around. "Sitting still makes me think too much." He understood that. He'd spent years running from the same thing. They fell into a routine. Lucas worked outside during the day, mending fence rails, checking on the mare, splitting wood for the stove. Grace kept the cabin, cooked meals, watched the windows while he was in the yard. They moved around each other careful at first, like two people sharing a space they hadn't chosen. But by the end of the first week, the carefulness faded. At meals, they talked, short exchanges at first. Pass the salt, coffee's ready. Weather's turning colder, then longer ones. Stories about the territory, towns he'd passed through, places she'd read about in books her father brought home from his travels. One evening, after supper, Lucas sat on the porch step. The air had turned sharp with the coming night. Stars were beginning to show through the cottonwood branches overhead. The evening star hung low on the horizon, bright and steady. Grace came out with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and sat down beside him, pulling a quilt around her shoulders. The log cabin pattern showed faded red and brown and blue in the last light. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked. "Every day, for about 5 years. What stopped you?" Lucas turned the cup in his hands. The tin had worn smooth from years of use. Nowhere to go, nobody waiting. He paused. "Then your pa's letter came. You answered because you was lonely. I answered because your pa wrote like a man who meant what he said. Figured his daughter might be the same." Grace looked down at her cup. The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but close. The first time he'd seen anything like it on her face. He'd have liked hearing that, she said. "Wish I could have told him myself." The wind picked up, pushing through the gaps in the porch rails. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called. Another answered from further away. The mare shifted in her stall, settling for the night. "Can I ask you something?" Grace said. He nodded. "Why'd you stop drifting? What made you settle here, of all places?" Lucas leaned against the porch post. The question sat heavy between them. He could brush it off, change the subject. He'd done it before, with other people, in other places, but she wasn't other people. "I had a brother," he said, "younger than me by 4 years. Name was Caleb." Grace waited, didn't push. "Fever took him. Summer of 72. I was 23. He was 19. Lucas kept his eyes on the darkness beyond the porch. "We grew up on a farm in Missouri. Our folks were gone by then, just the 2 of us running the place. After Caleb died, I couldn't stay. Every corner of that house reminded me of him. Every field we'd worked together, every tool he'd touched. So you left, sold the farm for whatever I could get, headed west. Told myself I was looking for something better." He turned from the darkness, met her eyes. 10 years later, I ended up here, bought this land with what I had left, built this cabin with my own hands. Figured if I stayed in one place long enough, maybe I'd stop running. Did it work? Some days, he took a breath. Some days I still wake up thinking I should pack a bag and disappear before the sun comes up. Grace wrapped her hands tighter around her cup. The lamplight from inside the cabin caught the shadows under her eyes. She'd been sleeping poorly too. He'd heard her moving around at night, pacing, checking the windows. "My ma died when I was 7, she said. Childbirth. The baby didn't make it either. After that, it was just me and Pa." She took a breath. "He taught me to read, taught me to cook, taught me to shoot. Even though most folks thought that wasn't proper for a girl, He said a woman should know how to take care of herself. Smart man. He was. Her voice caught. She steadied it. He was also stubborn and proud and terrible at asking for help. He thought he could fix everything by himself. That's what got him killed. Lucas said nothing. There was nothing to say. I used to think I was different from him, Grace continued, that I'd learned from his mistakes. But then he died, and I ran. Didn't ask anyone for help. Didn't trust anyone. Just kept moving until I found you. She looked up. Maybe I'm more like him than I thought. That ain't a bad thing. It is if it gets you killed. The wind rattled the porch rails. The coyotes had gone quiet. Only the sound of the mare breathing in her stall broke the silence. Lucas stood and walked to the corner of the porch where his bedroll waited during the day. On top of it sat an old harmonica, dusty and unused. He hadn't played it in years, hadn't wanted to. My brother gave me this, he said, picking it up. For my 20th birthday. Said every cowboy needed to know at least one song. You play Used To. He turned it over in his hands. The brass had tarnished, but the reeds still looked good. Haven't touched it since he died. Grace rose from the step. She crossed to where he stood, close enough that he could smell the wood smoke in her hair from tending the stove. She didn't touch him, didn't reach for the harmonica, just stood there, looking at it. Maybe it's time you did, she said. Lucas met her eyes, brown, like her letters described, tired, like someone who'd been carrying too much for too long. But something else there now, something he hadn't seen before. I'm glad Pa chose you, she said. Whatever happens next, I'm glad it was you. He didn't answer. Couldn't find the words. But she didn't seem to need them. She turned and walked back inside. The door closed softly behind her. Lucas put the harmonica back on his bedroll. He stood at the porch rail, watching the darkness outside. The ridge sat empty. No riders. No lanterns. But the silence felt different now. Heavier. Like something waiting to happen. Somewhere in that darkness. A horse whinnied. Not the mare. The sound came from the east this time. From the direction of town. Lucas moved to the corner of the porch. Pressed his back against the wall. Watched. A single lantern bobbed through the scrub oak, moving toward the cabin, moving fast. Lucas grabbed his rifle from beside the door. Grace sat up in bed inside, the quilt falling away. Stay down, he said through the open window. The lantern grew closer. One rider, no others visible behind. Lucas watched from the porch shadow, finger resting outside the trigger guard. The horse stopped at the fence line. The rider dismounted, hung the lantern on the post, and raised both hands high. Mr. Sands, the voice carried clear across the yard. I come unarmed. I represent interested parties who wish to resolve this matter peacefully. What parties? May I approach? I'd rather not shout our business for anyone listening. Lucas looked through the window at Grace. She'd risen from the bed, stood pressed against the far wall. Her eyes caught the faint light from the dying lamp. Let him come, she whispered. Let's hear what they want. Lucas stepped off the porch. Walk slow. Keep your hands where I can see them. The man crossed the yard with measured steps. He wore a dark suit, too clean for the territory. A bowler hat sat square on his head. His boots showed no dust. City clothes, city manners. He stopped at the porch steps. "May I enter?" Lucas stepped aside. The man walked in, removed his hat, looked around the cabin. His eyes lingered on Grace in her rumpled dress, then moved to the table, the lamp, the rifle in Lucas's hands. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or pity. "My name is Pemberton. I represent the Colton Mining Company." He set his hat on the table. "I've come to make an offer. At midnight." Mr. Colton felt the matter was urgent. Pemberton reached into his coat. Lucas raised the rifle. "Easy, Mr. Sands. Just papers." He withdrew a folded document and laid it beside his hat. "A deed of transfer for your land, signed and notarized. Clear title, free of any liens or encumbrances." Lucas didn't look at the paper. "Keep talking." Pemberton reached into his coat again. This time, he pulled out a leather pouch. He loosened the drawstring and poured the contents onto the table. 5 gold coins, double eagles. They caught the lamplight and threw it back, bright and yellow. $500, Pemberton said. "More than this property is worth, more than you'd make in 3 years of honest labor." His eyes moved to the cabin walls, the rope bed, the worn furniture. Perhaps 5 years. Given the state of things, Lucas felt something tighten in his chest. The man's words landed like stones. "What do you want in return?" Grace asked from the shadows. Pemberton smiled. The expression didn't reach his eyes. "The badge, nothing more. Sheriff Harlan's effects belong with his estate, not with strangers. Mr. Colton simply wishes to return them to their proper place." "Their proper place," Lucas said. "The Clearwater County Historical Society, a memorial display for a fallen lawman." Pemberton spread his hands. "A gesture of respect, nothing sinister." The lie sat in the air between them, thick as smoke. Lucas looked at the coins. $500. He could buy another horse, fix the roof before winter, stock enough supplies to last 2 years. He could walk away from all of this. Let someone else carry the weight. The thought made his stomach turn, but it was there, and Pemberton saw it. "You're a practical man, Mr. Sands. I can see that." The lawyer's voice dropped lower, more intimate. "You answered an advertisement for a bride. You built this cabin alone. You survive on what you can scratch from this dirt." He gestured at the room. "This is not the life of a man who seeks trouble. This is the life of a man who wants to be left alone." Lucas said nothing. His hands felt heavy on the rifle. "Mr. Colton is a reasonable man." Pemberton continued. "The badge means nothing now. Sheriff Harlan is dead. Whatever grudges he carried died with him. Why should you suffer for a dead man's quarrels?" He looked at Grace. Why should she? Grace stepped forward. Her face had gone pale. "Don't talk about my father, Miss Harlan." Pemberton's voice turned soft, almost kind. "Your father was a stubborn man, admirable in some ways, but stubborn. He made enemies he didn't need to make, fought battles he couldn't win, and now he's gone, and you're left holding his burdens." He gestured at the coins. "This is your chance to set them down. Start fresh. Build a life without looking over your shoulder." Grace's hands curled into fists at her sides. Her chin trembled. She looked at the gold on the table. and Lucas saw something cross her face. Want. Just for a moment. The want of someone exhausted and scared and desperate for it to be over. She looked at Lucas, her eyes wet, her voice barely a whisper. "I almost want you to take it," she said. "For just a second. I almost want you to say yes and make this all go away." Her voice cracked. "What kind of daughter thinks that? What kind of person?" She turned away, walked to the far corner of the cabin, pressed her forehead against the wall. Her shoulders shook, but no sound came out. Pemberton watched her with something like satisfaction. Then he turned back to Lucas. "Take the gold," he said. "Forget the badge. Start your marriage right." Lucas looked at Grace in the corner, at the gold on the table, at the lawyer standing in his home like he owned it. He set the rifle against the wall, walked to the table, picked up one of the coins, turned it over in his fingers. Heavy, real, worth more than anything he'd held in years. Then he set it back down. "Tell Colton he can come get this badge himself," Lucas said. His voice came out quiet, steady, and while he's at it, he can explain to the lady why her father had to die. Pemberton's face went hard. The politeness drained away, leaving something cold underneath. "You've made a poor decision, Mr. Sands." He picked up his hat, left the coins and the deed on the table. "Mr. Colton offered you a way out. You could have taken the gold, married the girl, lived a quiet life. Instead, you've chosen to stand with a dead man against the most powerful family in the territory. Wouldn't be the first time I made a bad choice." Pemberton walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the latch. "The riders will come tomorrow," he said. "Not to watch, not to wait. Mr. Colton's patience has limits, and you've reached them." He put on his hat. "I hope the sheriff's ghost is worth dying for." He walked out into the darkness. The lantern still hung on the fence post, swaying in the wind. Lucas watched him mount his horse and ride away, the hoofbeats fading until only silence remained. Grace still stood in the corner, her forehead pressed against the rough wood. Her voice came out broken. "I wanted you to take it. For 1 second. I wanted you to take the money and tell me to leave." She turned. Her face was wet. "What kind of daughter does that make me? What kind of person wishes her father's death meant nothing?" "The kind who's been running for 3 weeks, Lucas said. "The kind who's exhausted and scared and doesn't know who to trust." He crossed to her, put his hand on her shoulder. "You ain't weak for wanting it to be over. You're human." She looked up at him. "Would it have been easier if you'd taken it?" "Easier, yes." He held her gaze. "But then I'd be the man your pa thought I wasn't." Outside, the lantern on the fence post flickered and died. The darkness pressed in around the cabin. "We leave tonight," Lucas said. "Pack what you can carry. We ride for the canyon country before they come back." Grace wiped her face with the back of her hand, straightened her shoulders. "There's a path through the canyons," Lucas said. "No horse can follow it. I walked it once, years ago. Swore I'd never walk it again." "Why not?" Lucas looked out at the black hills. The moon had set. No stars showed through the clouds. "Because last time, I was running from something. This time, I'm running toward it." They rode through the canyon in darkness. No trail, no markers, just the sound of hooves on stone and the black walls rising on either side. Lucas led the way. picking through the narrow passages from memory. 10 years since he'd walked this path. 10 years since he'd sworn never to come back. The canyon smelled the same, dust and sage and something older, something that lived in the rock itself. By dawn, they reached the wagon road. Grace swayed in the saddle, exhaustion pulling at her shoulders. They'd been riding for 6 hours without rest. "There's a ranch ahead," Lucas said. "Silas's sister runs it with her husband. Martha, we can stop there. Can we trust them?" Silas sent word ahead. "If we can't trust his blood, we can't trust anyone." The ranch sat in a shallow valley, smoke rising from the chimney. A woman stood on the porch, watching them approach. Gray hair pulled back tight, apron dusted with flour. A shotgun rested against the rail beside her. Lucas dismounted at the fence. "Mrs. Cooper, I'm Lucas Sands, Silas's friend." The woman studied him. Then her eyes moved to Grace, still mounted, barely able to sit upright. "My brother sent a boy 2 nights ago," Martha said. "Told me you might be coming. Told me why." She looked back at Lucas. "You're either brave or stupid, Mr. Sands. Haven't decided which. Probably both." Martha almost smiled. She stepped down from the porch and took the mare's reins. "Bring her inside. She looks half dead." "I've got coffee on and biscuits in the oven." Lucas helped Grace down from the saddle, her legs buckled. He caught her, held her upright. "I can walk," she said. "I know you can, but you don't have to." He carried her inside. Martha led them to a small bedroom at the back of the house. Clean sheets, a quilt folded at the foot of the bed. Grace was asleep before her head touched the pillow. Lucas sat with her until her breathing steadied. Then he walked back to the kitchen, where Martha waited with coffee and questions. "Silas says you're going after the Coltons," she said. "I'm going after justice. The Coltons are just in the way." "Same thing, in these parts." Martha poured coffee into a tin cup, pushed it across the table. "The judge you're looking for, Whitmore, he lives another day's ride north, old cabin at the mouth of Red Rock Canyon. You know him, knew him, 30 years ago, when he was still riding circuit, fair man, honest." She sat down across from Lucas. "But he's old now, 70, maybe more, sick. Some say. I don't know what help he can give you. He can write. That's all I need." Lucas drank the coffee. It burned going down, but it cleared some of the fog from his head. "I'll leave the girl here," he said. "Ride to Whitmore alone. Faster that way. And if you don't come back, then you get her to the territorial marshal in Carson City, a man named Cole. Give him the badge. Tell him everything." Martha nodded. No arguments. No questions. Lucas understood why Silas trusted her. He left at noon, pushing the mare hard through the hills. The country grew rougher as he rode north. Juniper and pinyon gave way to bare red rock. The trail narrowed to a thread scratched into the canyon wall. By nightfall of the second day, he reached the canyon mouth. A cabin sat against the cliff face, small and weathered. Smoke rose from a crooked chimney. A mule grazed in a pen beside the door. The mare stumbled as Lucas dismounted. She'd given everything she had. He tied her to the fence and walked to the cabin on legs that barely held him. 4 days of riding, 3 hours of sleep. His eyes burned. His back screamed. He knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again. Judge Whitmore, my name is Lucas Sands. Thomas Harlan sent me. A long silence, then the scrape of a chair inside. Footsteps, slow and uneven. The door opened a crack. An old man looked out. White hair, wild and uncombed. Face carved with deep lines. His hands gripped the door frame, knuckles swollen with arthritis. But his eyes remained sharp, clear, watching. Thomas Harlan is dead, the old man said. I know. His daughter came to me. She brought something he wanted you to see. Whitmore studied him through the gap. His eyes moved to the mare at the fence, head hanging low, to the dust on Lucas's clothes, to the exhaustion carved into his face. Then he opened the door wider. Come in. Close the door behind you. Wind plays games with these old bones. The cabin inside was sparse. A cot, a stove, a table covered with papers and books, law books. Lucas realized, old ones, their spines cracked and faded. Whitmore lowered himself into a chair by the stove. His hands shook as he reached for a pipe on the table. You rode 2 days to find an old man, he said. I rode 2 days to find the one name Sheriff Harlan circled. Lucas pulled the badge from his pocket. He opened the hidden compartment, removed the folded paper, and handed it to Whitmore. The old man unfolded it with trembling fingers. He held it close to the lamp, squinting at the cramped handwriting. His lips moved as he read, Marcus Colton, Edwin Colton, Henry Marsh. He looked up. These names, I've known about them for 15 years. Suspected, at least. But suspicion isn't evidence. This is evidence. Yes. Whitmore set the paper on his knee. Thomas Harlan, stubborn son of a gun, worked under me when I was circuit judge, 20 years back. He was a deputy then, young, angry, wanted to fix everything wrong with the world. The old man's voice softened. I told him patience was the weapon of the just. He told me patience was the excuse of cowards. Was he right? Maybe. Whitmore looked at the paper again. He sent his daughter to you because he knew I was too old to protect her, too weak to ride, too slow to run. He met Lucas's eyes. But I'm not too old to write, and my signature still means something in this territory. He pushed himself up from the chair and walked to the table, cleared a space among the papers, found a pen and a bottle of ink. I'll write a formal deposition, he said. Everything I know about the Coltons, everything I suspected but couldn't prove. This paper fills the gaps. He dipped the pen in ink. I'll stamp it with my judicial seal. It won't be enough to arrest them on its own, but it'll be enough to bring a federal marshal, enough to open an investigation they can't buy their way out of. Lucas watched him write. The old man's hand shook, but the letters came out clear, strong, the handwriting of a man who'd spent 40 years putting words into law. It took 2 hours. Whitmore wrote 3 pages, signed each one, and pressed his seal into red wax at the bottom. Take these to the territorial marshal in Carson City, he said. A man named Cole, honest. Far as I know, tell him Judge Whitmore sent you. Tell him the Coltons have been stealing gold claims for 20 years and killing anyone who got in the way. Lucas folded the papers and tucked them into his shirt beside the badge. Why didn't you do this yourself years ago? When you first suspected, Whitmore sat back down. The effort of writing had cost him. His face had gone gray. Because I was afraid, he said. The Coltons have men, money, connections in every courthouse from here to Sacramento. I told myself I was waiting for proof, but the truth is, I was waiting for someone braver than me to carry the burden. He looked at Lucas. Thomas Harlan was that man. Now he's dead, and you're here in his place. I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn. Same thing, sometimes. Whitmore closed his eyes. Go now. Get those papers to Carson City before the Coltons find out what you're carrying. And take care of that girl. She's all that's left of a good man. Lucas rode back the way he came. The mare moved slower now, stumbling twice on the rocky trail. He had to walk the last 5 miles, leading her by the reins, his boots wearing thin on the stones. He reached Martha's ranch as the sun set on the second evening. Grace stood on the porch. She saw him coming and ran down the path to meet him at the gate. She threw her arms around him before he could speak. The first embrace. He didn't know what to do with his hands. They hung at his sides for a moment. Then they found her back, held on. I thought you weren't coming back, she said into his chest. Had to. Left my harmonica at your place. She laughed, a small sound, broken and raw, but real. Behind them. Martha stepped onto the porch. Her face was tight. There's news from town, she called. Silas sent a rider this morning. The Coltons know you went to see the judge. They've got men watching every trail north to Carson City. Lucas looked at the mountains. The hard part was just beginning. They didn't ride to Carson City. Carson City came to them. Lucas sent the papers with a rider Martha trusted. A young man named Jennings, who knew the back trails better than anyone in the territory. He left before dawn, carrying Judge Whitmore's deposition and a letter explaining everything. 2 weeks passed. Lucas and Grace stayed close to Martha's ranch, watching the trails, sleeping in shifts. Martha's husband kept a rifle by the door. They waited. On the 15th morning, riders appeared on the southern ridge. 6 men in a line. Federal stars on their vests caught the morning sun. Marshal Cole dismounted at the gate, a tall man with a gray mustache and steady eyes. He removed his hat when he saw Grace standing on the porch. Miss Harlan, I'm sorry about your father. He was a good lawman, better than most. Grace nodded. She didn't speak. Cole turned to Lucas. Judge Whitmore's deposition arrived 5 days ago. The governor had been waiting for evidence against the Coltons for years. He issued warrants within hours. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out the folded papers. I'm riding to Clearwater today to make the arrests. They have men, Lucas said. Armed men watching every trail. Had men. Cole's voice held no satisfaction. Most of them scattered when they heard federal marshals were coming. The Coltons don't inspire loyalty, just fear. And fear runs when the odds change. What about Marcus and Edwin? Marcus was at the bank this morning when we sent word ahead. Couldn't run without causing a scene in front of half the town. He'll be in handcuffs before noon. Cole folded the papers and tucked them away. Edwin tried to slip out through the back country 2 days ago. My deputies caught him at the territorial line. He's already in custody in Carson City. Grace let out a breath. Her hand found the porch rail, gripped it. It's done, she asked. The arrests are done. The trial will take time, but Henry Marsh, the assayer, already confessed everything in exchange for a lighter sentence. He gave up names, dates, locations of forged documents. Cole put his hat back on. The Colton Mining Company is finished. Miss Harlan, your father's work is complete. The marshals rode out an hour later. Lucas and Grace watched them until they disappeared over the ridge. Martha came out with coffee. Nobody drank it. What now? Grace asked. Lucas looked at her, at the ranch around them, at the mountains to the north where Judge Whitmore sat in his cabin, waiting to hear if his signature had meant something. Now we go home, he said. They rode back to Lucas's ranch 3 days later. The cabin looked the same. Dust on the windows. The mare's old hoof prints still visible in the yard. But something had changed. The weight that had pressed down on the place was gone. Lucas had chosen a spot at the edge of his property years ago, under a cottonwood tree that overlooked the valley. He'd thought about putting a garden there once. Never got around to it. Now he dug a different kind of hole. Grace stood beside him as he worked. She held her father's badge in both hands. The brass had been cleaned, the star points polished until they caught the light. When the hole was deep enough, Lucas stepped back. Grace knelt in the dirt. Her dress would stain. She didn't seem to care. She looked at the badge for a long moment. Then she placed it in the earth. "Pa," she said. Her voice came out rough. "I found him. The man you sent me to find. He was everything you said he'd be." She took a handful of dirt, let it fall through her fingers onto the brass. "I brought your evidence to Judge Whitmore. The Coltons are going to prison. Everyone's going to know what they did, what you died trying to prove." She covered the badge with her hands, pressed the dirt down smooth. "You can rest now," she said. He kept the promise. She stayed there for a long time. Lucas stood back, giving her space. The wind moved through the cottonwood, rustling the leaves. Somewhere in the valley, a meadowlark called. When Grace finally stood, her face was wet, but she was smiling. "He would have liked you," she said. "I would have liked him." They walked back to the cabin together. The sun was setting, throwing long shadows across the porch. Lucas lit the lamp in the window. The flame caught and held, steady against the coming dark. 1 week later, they stood in the small church in Clearwater. The pews held more people than Lucas expected. Silas sat in the front row with Martha and her husband. Behind them, faces Lucas recognized from town. People who had looked away a month ago. People who had crossed the street to avoid him. Now they sat with their hats in their laps, watching. The preacher's voice was steady and kind. An old man with white hair and a worn Bible. He read the vows slow, giving each word its weight. When he asked if Lucas would take this woman, Lucas answered before he finished the question. Grace wore a calico dress that Martha had given her, blue flowers on white cotton. Her hair was pinned up, showing the curve of her neck. She held a small bunch of wildflowers that she'd picked that morning from the field behind the cabin. The preacher asked her the same question. She said yes, Her voice didn't waver. Silas signed the register as witness. Martha cried into her handkerchief. The church bell rang 3 times. Afterward, they walked out into the sunlight. People lined the street. Some nodded. Some tipped their hats. A few smiled. The bank had closed the day after the arrests. Half the land office records had been seized. 3 families had already filed claims to recover property the Coltons had stolen. The territory was changing. "Funny how that works," Lucas said. "What? Last month, nobody in this town would look at us. Now they're lining up to shake hands." Grace slipped her arm through his. "They were scared. People do strange things when they're scared. You weren't scared. I was terrified every single day." She looked up at him. "I just didn't have the luxury of showing it." They rode back to the ranch as the sun dropped toward the hills. The cabin waited, smoke curling from the chimney where Martha had left a fire burning for them. Lucas unsaddled the mare and turned her into the corral. Grace went inside to check the stove. By the time he joined her, she had coffee brewing and beans warming in the pot. The lamp on the table threw soft light across the room. The wedding quilt Martha had given them lay folded on the bed. After supper, Lucas sat on the porch. The stars were coming out, one by one. The air smelled of sage and wood smoke and the last warmth of autumn. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the harmonica. Dusty, tarnished. He hadn't played it in 10 years. He raised it to his lips, blew a note, then another. The sound came out thin and wavering, but it was there. Grace stepped onto the porch. She didn't say anything, just sat down beside him and leaned her head against his shoulder. Lucas played, slow notes at first, hesitant, then steadier. The melody came back to him in pieces, an old song, something Caleb had taught him years ago in another life. The music floated out across the valley. The mare lifted her head in the corral. A coyote answered from somewhere in the hills. Grace's hand found his knee, warm through the fabric. "You're rusty," she said. "I know. Keep playing anyway." He did. The song stretched on, filling the silence between the stars. Inside the cabin, the lamp burned steady in the window. 2 figures on the porch, pressed close together. The night settled around them, soft and still. There is something quiet that stays with us after a story like this one. Not a lesson, not a moral, just a feeling tender and familiar, like holding a letter you have read many times before. Many of us have carried something alone, a promise made to someone who is no longer here, a weight we did not ask for but could not set down. Some of us have waited at windows, watching for someone who might not come. Some of us have loved without being certain we were doing it right. And perhaps you have known what it feels like to be trusted by someone truly trusted before you felt ready for it. To be chosen not because you were perfect, but because you were honest. These things do not need to be resolved. They are allowed to rest, unfinished. The way old photographs rest in a drawer, we do not have to understand them. We only have to let them be. If this story sat with you tonight, that is enough. If it reminded you of someone, or some place, or some version of yourself you had almost forgotten, that is enough too. Thank you for staying until the lamp was lit. Thank you for listening.